Okay, so welcome to lesson 7 here. In this tutorial, I wanted to go through how I would go about setting up my site to display specific content for my website. So on my blog, if you go to my blog here, I have a very simple way of displaying my content here. I've got a main page, like a home page, that displays this nice full width content of the different blog posts that I post. And it has a filter up here where people can come through and maybe filter between different categories of posts. I also have my work page where I post portfolio level work. And this is, again, it's a 4-column spread that is fully responsive. And it's got this kind of nice zooming effect on these posts here. And so what I'm going to do is go through how I did this. And I will say to begin that this process does use premium plugins, and this software generally costs me about $100. So you might not want to go that route if you don't want to pay money like that. You can go ahead and use a free theme, but for somebody that develops WordPress websites, we usually have a couple of plugins, premium plugins, and premium themes in our collection that help us develop sites faster. So that's it. That's what I have in my case. I have a couple go-to premium themes that I use over and over for multiple sites, and as well as plugins. So in this case, the plugin that I'm using to display these posts like this is called the Grid, and I'll link to it down below. I will be showing you how to set up the Grid and how to set it up on a new site, as well as how to set up the Uncode theme, which is the theme that I've been using for most of my sites in 2017. So let's go over to our test site, and you'll see that I've used FakerPress to generate some fake content so that we can start playing with some layouts. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to upload the theme, or rather the plugin, the Grid. So let's just go ahead and navigate to have it on my desktop here, and I'm going to upload the Grid. Again, this is a $25 plugin. And I love this plugin. This is one of my favorite plugins. It's really great at displaying content, and it's also very fast. So as you'll see down here, we have the Grid that's now shown up here. And there'll be a lot of settings that we can customize in there, but let's go ahead and get the theme uploaded as well. So I'm going to click on Themes, and I'm going to click Add New. And I'm going to upload my theme, again, from my desktop. And I'll upload this. Now you'll note that there's another file on my desktop called Untitled Chapter. And the way that WordPress generally works for themes is themes are constantly going through updates, right? The developers are releasing new batches of updates all the time for popular themes. So they've developed a way to have a theme that is, you can see here, I have my Uncode theme here, and I'm just going to upload what is called a child theme. And child themes are just basically, it's a way to keep the settings through updates on your themes. So when I activate this child theme, my website is acting like I have fully activated the Uncode theme. However, I've actually activated the Uncode child theme, which is going to hold all of my different changes and all of the different options that I choose for this theme, and it will hold it through updates, which is a nice feature. Now, before we get into actually theming out our website, let's take a look at some of the common errors you might get when installing themes. So this may depend upon the theme that you are using, but for this instance, I'm getting a WordPress memory limit error, where it's saying that it recommends at least 64 megabytes of memory, and I only have 40 megabytes available on my server for the WP memory limit. So let's go ahead and look at how we would increase that, because a lot of these premium themes are going to require a little bit more server resources in order to act in an optimal fashion. So I'm just going to open up this link that they have provided here, which is called Editing WP Config on the codex.wordpress.org page. And you'll see it jumps us right to the lines of code that we would need to add to our WordPress config file. So let's just go ahead and minimize this here. And I'm going to open up my PuTTY instance and connect to my server. Okay, so I'm going to log in now as my sudo user and authenticate with my key password. Okay, now we're going to run a simple command to open up a text editor for this file wp-config. So I'm going to type out sudo nano, which is going to open up a text editor. And now I'm going to enter in the location of our WP config file. Now this will be different for you, but if you're using Easy Engine, it should be a very similar directory path in that it should be var www. Now this is where it will change for you. I'm going to use my domain name that I installed this with, /wp config.php. Now, when I run this, it's going to ask me for my sudo password, and it's going to open up the WP config file. Now, note that everything in here is very sensitive for your website, and you do not want any of this information to leak out to other people. Since this is a test site, it's not a big deal. But for example, you don't want people to know your MySQL database, especially your MySQL database password, and really anything in this file, your salt keys. Everything in here is pretty sensitive, and you definitely don't want people having control over this file. Luckily, Easy Engine does a good job at securing this file, so we don't have to worry about people messing around in here. Now, I usually enter in the changes that I'd like to make up at the top. You could use a comment system. You can see here anything in blue is not going to be run as code. It's commented out line by line. So it's generally a good practice to go ahead and open up a new comment for new work that you're doing. I'm just going to use the syntax that they have been using here. And I'm going to say increasing WP memory limit. Now all I have to do is navigate back to this page here. And I'm just going to copy and paste in these settings here. So define WP memory limit. And now remember, our website is asking us to increase it to at least 64, but I'm going to go ahead and increase it to 96 because let's just say I'm going to be doing some more heavy-handed work on my website. So in the case of maybe you're using Visual Composer or lots of plugins, you would need a lot of WordPress memory limits, and you could come up to boundaries in the future where you're running out of memory. So I'm just going to go ahead and give myself a safe amount of space, 96 megabytes of memory, and I'm going to also give myself a max limit, which is good for admin features. As you can see there in the code base, it's telling us administration tasks require much more memory than usual when in the administration area. And so we're going to use this memory max limit that's going to give us more headroom for our admin side. So now in order to save these settings, all we have to do is press Control X, press Y, and now those settings have been saved. So now we can go back to our website, and let's go ahead and maximize this, and let's refresh the page. And you can now see the WP memory limit is now 96 megabytes. So now we are ready to go and start theming out our website. So let's start doing that. All right, so let's go over some of the first things we need to do when we install a premium theme. And one of those is make sure that we have the required plugins for the theme. So for the Uncode theme, there's this thing called Install Plugins right here. So I'm just going to click on this, and you'll see there's a lot of recommended plugins. I usually only install the plugins that I need. For example, if I need a contact form, they recommend that I install Contact Form 7 here. For this site, I'm just going to go with what is required, and that's going to be the Uncode Core, Uncode Visual Composer, and Uncode Visual Composer Clipboard. So I'm just going to click on those three and click Install. And once those plugins have been installed, we want to go ahead and click back on Install Plugins and activate those plugins. And when we click on the plugins page here, okay, it's redirecting us to this Visual Composer saying that we've just installed it. But if we click on the plugins page here, you can see now that we have the Uncode Visual Composer, the Clipboard, as well as Uncode Core installed. And we're going to go ahead and dismiss this notice to install these other plugins, since for this case on this website, I don't need them. Okay, so we've got the required plugins installed and out of the way. Now let's talk a little bit about the structure of organizing our content. And this is a personal preference. This is just how I do it. Since some of my sites use Visual Composer, this is just a method that I've used. But basically what you want to do is use pages to hold all of your content. Now, what I mean by that is, let's go back to my blog so I can describe this a little better. You see up at the top here, I have 3 pages on my website: blog, work, and about. These 3 pages all do different things. The blog page is simply showing off anything that is put into the posts category. Anything that's posted here is going to go under my blog page. Anything that is under my work page is actually a portfolio post, which you'll see right here, portfolio. So anything that I post here will show up on my work page. And my about page is simply a static page with just some written content and some images. So I'm going to follow this similar structure of a 3-page setup because I think it's a good way to get up and off the ground with your website. Okay, so let's take a look at creating our pages for our content. I'm going to add some new pages here. I'm going to call this first one blog. And I'm going to go ahead and publish this page. And I'm going to add another one and call this work. Publish. Okay, so I've got 2 pages on my website now. Now let's look at adding those to our menu. So to add those pages to our menu, let's look at Appearance and Menu tab. And it's going to ask us to create a menu. Well, in this case, I already have created a menu called Home. So let's go ahead and delete these old links out of here. And let's add in our new pages. Over here, I'm going to click View All and make sure I have all my pages available. And I'm going to click on Blog and Work, and I'm going to add these in here. And I'm going to click Save. So now if I navigate to my site and refresh the page, you'll see that up at the top here, and this is being obstructed a little bit by the admin bar, which won't show up for normal visitors. But you can see my menu up here is showing my blog and my work pages, which is exactly what I want. Now, another thing to note is that our front page is currently set to something other than what we want. In this case, it's set to our static post. So under Settings and Reading, I'm looking at my front page displays option, and I'm going to set it to a static page and set that static page to be my blog page. And I'm going to save these changes. Now when people come to my site, rustygutsgaming.com, they're going to be redirected to the actual blog page, which in this case doesn't have any content on it as of yet. Now let's look at adding some content to this blog page using the grid. So let's go ahead and click on the grid, and we want to create a new grid. Let's click Create a Grid, and we're going to call this our blog grid. Now you'll see that a shortcode has been generated down here, and what we want to do is first copy this shortcode, and we want to navigate back to our pages in another tab here, and we want to edit our blog page. Now my blog page, I'm simply going to paste in the shortcode like this. Now I want to update this page, and let's head back to the grid settings. Okay, so now let's click on the second tab here and click on Source. You can see that there's many different things you can display with the grid. In my case, I'm just going to be using the posts on my website. So let's look at posting our posts. You can see here for post types, it's going to be posting our posts. And there are multiple things that we can post here. For example, if I'm creating my work page, I might want to post something in my portfolio posts. Now for my blog, I'm using just my posts like I described before, so we're just going to leave it on posts. Now there's a lot of settings in the grid, and I recommend that you go through and customize the grid to your own liking. But for this case, I'm just going to set up a very basic grid. For media, I'm going to be using let's start with the large size. And let's see, let's look at the grid. Okay, so this page here is pretty important. It's asking us the type of grid we want to display, the item ratio. Now, what I'm going to do is just save all this stuff out, and let's just take a look at what our grid looks like. So I'm going to refresh my blog page here. Okay, and so it looks like we've got 6 columns across. Looks like we've got maybe some issues with the titles here running into the bottom of the posts. Now, don't be alarmed by these white squares or gray squares. This is just some of the faker content settings. Okay, so this is looking pretty good, but I'd like to customize this more to my liking. I'm thinking of using a 2-column spread, of having a post on the left and a post on the right. So let's look at doing that now. I'm going to change the number of columns I have down to 2. And once it gets down to a small mobile size, it will switch to only 1 column. Now let's look at the skins. And I'm going to choose something that's not so intrusive. Something that's very, very simple. I'm going to use this skin, for example. It's not going to show any titles or descriptions. It's just going to show people the link to the post. So let's go ahead and refresh. So you can see now I have a 2-column layout here, and this is to my liking just for this demo site. Now you can see that there's a lot of different customization options that you can do with the grid, and you can really achieve any sort of look that you're looking for. And that's why I recommend the grid to new WordPress users, is because there's so much that you can do with it. Okay, so we've set up a basic grid here, and you can see how easy it is to start displaying your own content and how easy it is to use the grid. Now let's look at some basic Visual Composer options that could let us do something similar to the grid without having to purchase the grid. So let's go ahead and use our other page, which is called Work. And let's simulate that we are uploading some portfolio work to our site, but we don't have the grid. So what you can do is use Visual Composer, which is bundled with the Uncode theme. And I'm going to activate Visual Composer by just clicking on this backend editor button. Now you can see that we have the Visual Composer tab opened up here, and we want to add an element. So there are a lot of different ways that you can display posts with Visual Composer. Just think of Visual Composer as an extension of the grid. While the grid focuses on displaying only posts or specific content to your site, Visual Composer can do a little bit more. However, I do like the way that the grid displays posts a little bit more than the way Visual Composer does it. So Visual Composer is going to display posts with this post guy here that's an element. And we could configure this in a way that looks like the grid. There's a lot of options here. It's not as easy to understand. There's just a lot of different submenus, a ton of options here. But we could get a similar effect that the grid is going to generate using Visual Composer and the posts element. But let's go ahead and use the media element. So I'm just going to click on Media Gallery here. And we need to upload some media to this gallery. So let's click on the plus button here. And we're going to click on Upload Files. And I'm going to navigate to my desktop where I have some pictures here. So I'm just going to select these pictures. Again, just some demo content. And I'm going to upload them. All right, so once those are done, we can click on Add Media. And let's go ahead and look at some of the options here. So you can see that this is the media that we have, and it's going to be displayed just like you would your portfolio work. Now I'm going to look at some different styles. We're going to start with the Masonry style, but there is a lot of options that we have here. Let's just, again, save these changes, update our page, and take a look at what our page is going to look like. So I'm just going to navigate to my site and click on my work page. And boom. You can see that out of the box, Visual Composer does a great job at showing off your content in a very clean way. And with just a couple of clicks, we've already added some awesome content to our site that looks great. Now, again, if you'd like to change any of these settings, for example, if you'd like when somebody hovers over this for a title to appear, all of those settings are going to be within the Visual Composer element options, the media gallery settings here. And again, you can go through and familiarize yourself with all these different options, and I really recommend that you just play around until you find something that works. Okay, so I've gone over some very basic options for our website. We've installed a premium theme on our website, in this case, the Uncode theme. We've also gone over installing and using the grid to display posts as well. And so hopefully this gives you kind of a rough idea of how installing themes and plugins works with WordPress, as well as how to display content in a nice, clean way.